Hello and welcome to the 2014 NBA Draft Special. I'm David Locke. We are 5 o'clock on the East Coast, 3 o'clock your time, and we are live with a special tip-off edition. We may do this again tomorrow from the Barclays Center early. For those of you who are regular joining the bottom of the Hangout, I've actually extended an invitation to Jody to join us. So I'm waiting on that to see if he's able to jump aboard. And we'll see what other people might be able to round up. I didn't plan this extensively out to get long guests, but Jody's doing great work. So I thought he might be able to join us. But thank you very much for taking the time. Here's how it works. If you open it up, there should be, I just kind of tried to experience it myself for a moment. In the bottom right-hand corner, place for you to ask questions. We're going to drive this whole thing off of your questions and see what you have to say on things. I am probably loopy a little bit, kind of been flying today. That's what this day is. I get on the plane Friday morning. There's no period of time I'm ever more tired. So let me update you with the latest kind of news and information I have for you, and then we'll fly through your questions. The first thing is there's a trade going down right now. It doesn't have a draft impact really, but the Knicks are moving Tyson Chandler back to Dallas along with Jose Calderon, and along with Raymond Felton, and then Jose Calderon and Samuel Dalembert are going to the Knicks. I like the Jose Calderon more than I like Raymond Felton. In fact, I hate any trade that involves Raymond Felton going to any team. I think that's a bad deal for Dallas because they get Raymond Felton. But I think Chandler's back in Dallas is probably a good situation. He's better than Dalembert. So maybe that's the ifs and buts. And though it's interesting, Shane Larkin's supposed to be involved in this deal already, going to the Knicks from the Knicks from Dallas. From a draft standpoint, the situation out there holds as follows. One, it sounds as though Embiid may go 3, which means then if Vonleh goes 4, the Jazz get Exum at 5. That's pretty exciting stuff. Interesting today though, Dante Exum said the reason they didn't work out for the Jazz was because of the fact that Trey Burke was already there and they didn't think it was a good situation. Take that as you will. The other situation could be Exum goes 4, and then the Jazz have to decide between Vonleh and Gordon. Most people around the nation think it's going to be Vonleh. I feel as though Gordon is probably a better fit, but I'm high on the Gordon bandwagon. May turn to regret that at some point in time. So we'll see on that. I just got a note from Jody that says, I can see and hear you, but no invitation. Check. Actually, if you can see and hear me, then check your email because I just sent it to your email. You should have it in your email. I'll try it again though, but I think I have sent it. So that's the latest. Here's a lot of people seem to think Embiid is going to go 4 now or go 3. It opens up some very interesting concepts to see what that means and what happens and how that all plays out because I would be surprised by that. But it gets, again, this is what makes tomorrow exciting. The chances of getting to number 1 are slimming by the moment. Again, I think I kind of have alluded to this before, but the real problem is that Gordon Hayward can't be moved. And I think that's where Cleveland is probably more interested than anything else, and it just is not something that's going to work in that regard for the Jazz to be able to pull that off and get to number 1. But we will, they're trying. We'll see. They've obviously, it takes 2 to tango. They've got to decide what they want and all of that, so we'll see. From my understanding, by the way, I'm not sure, excuse me, I have a concrete offer has been made yet, but I do know, talking to people around the league, what I keep hearing is, well, if you could offer Gordon, then you probably could get a deal done. And the second thing I keep hearing is, on Burks and Cantor, I'm interested, but it's hard for me to take guys that are going to be restricted free agents as soon as that. So we'll see. We'll see what all that means. Otherwise, not a lot of news. I just posted the podcast that has all the interviews with all the guys. You can hear it. Give me your reactions on hearing them. Let's start to the questions because I think that's what will lead to much of the discussion here on everything. We'll start with Ginger, and the question is, what is the question you would have hoped a Jazz fan base would have asked by now but hasn't? Now that's one heck of a way to open up this podcast. I don't think I have one. I think you guys are pretty on it. Or hopefully I inform you enough. I don't think I have that question actually. I think you guys know what's going on. I think you're pretty in tuned to how this is all taking place. Let's go to Miguel. Who is there that we can draft at 5 that would be a higher scorer option than Hayward? Could this happen in his first year? At 5, becomes your go-to offensive player. I don't think he exists. I mean, if you think of, let's run down the options. You think of Vonleh, he used about 12 possessions a game in Indiana. That would be way too much to ask out of him. Gordon's a non-offensive player. Marcus Smart. You draft Marcus Smart, I would bet he becomes your primary leading scorer. I really like Marcus Smart an awful lot. I don't know if the Jazz could really go to camp with the likes of Trey Burke and Marcus Smart. I'm sure they'll say they can, and I'm sure that they would say hey, they can play together, which I actually think is accurate. They could play together. But I wonder whether that's a good thing to do to Quinn Snyder in his first year if you had those two. So if I was going to draft Smart at 5, and this may be overdoing it, but is the if I were to draft the at 5, I'm pausing here because I'm not sure if I really think what I'm about to tell you is true. And I need a Kleenex, and I'm dying. All right, so my thought is I'd have to, I probably should have to talk to a better mind than mine on this. But my quick thought is that if I were to draft Marcus Smart 5, that I would need to have Trey Burke deal done. That I would know I'm moving Trey. I'm not sure it would be helpful to this team to go to camp with both those guys. Both strong personalities, both fighting to be the point guard. I think that's a hard one to go with. That would be my quick thought. Haven't heard a Daily DeVar in a while. Do you have one today? This whole trip is a Daily DeVar. This is my most favorite time as the year as a reporter, the access, the opportunity to see these kids. And they're really kids. They looked really young today. They're 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids. And they have worked an incredible amount for young kids, given probably every aspect of their lives to this. And they are, from there, they are now embarking upon the next stage of their life. I mean, this is their college acceptance for 4 years or whatever, and they don't know where they're going to go, and they're nervous about it, and they're going to live in Sacramento or LA or Boston or Utah. I mean, let's be honest, Aaron Gordon and Marcus Smart and Noah Vonleh are sitting there with the chance of going to Orlando, unless Orlando. Okay, few of you got that. That was my night last night. And ended up in Uganda. So they can end up in Orlando. They can end up in Salt Lake City, Utah. They can end up in Boston, Massachusetts. They can in LA, or they can end up in Sacramento. All right, if you are an 18 or 19-year-old or 20-year-old, in most cases African American male, there's really two of those, or really one of those is appealing. Boston's not that appealing. One of those is way more appealing. One of those guys is winning the lottery and going to the Lakers. Really, and they're all going to be Joseph. Who's going to get it? Right? But more importantly, how fun is it to be around these guys as they're like? I mean, I remember it vividly with Gordon and Ennis and Alec, and so the way it works is I'm going to sit next to that crew. The minute that guy gets drafted, I go with him. Our guy gets drafted, I immediately go with him, and then I am with that guy for the next 2 hours. I miss the rest of the draft. I'll have a hard time hearing what we get at 23. I'll try to stay up on Twitter and everything. By the way, I meant to ask one question, and if you guys are diehards, and we got good viewership right now. If there's one thing I can do tomorrow, David Locke would make my draft experience better tomorrow if ... Email it to me at dlock09@gmail.com. My draft experience tomorrow will be better if David Locke, and shut up is not a choice. My draft. Let me know, because I'll try to do it. Is it a Twitter thing? Is it a live blog? Is it a storyline? What works best for you tomorrow to know what's going on in the draft and the draft day experience? Let me know. So That's my daily devar. Let's go to Angie. Do you think agents have too much power in draft situations where they control information, medical records? Seems like something maybe the NBA should regulate in the future. So there's two angles here. One is yes. To some extent, I do think that they have too much power. On another end, no. So on the level of yes, it does seem it would be better if every team had the same game they were playing with the same information and the same access to players. That seemingly really, if we're gonna have 30 franchises that all have a chance, um, that would seem like a much more fair way to do things. However, if I can't blame the agents. Their job is their clients. We think about it from a team perspective. They're just thinking about their client. The only thing Arn Tellem is worried about today right now is Joel Embiid, and that's his job. And Dante Exum and Marcus Smart's agents' job is to take care of. BJ Armstrong is taking care of um, that exactly. So I can't blame the agents, and I think they'll always do a little bit of this. I also think there's an obligation on us to continue to build our franchise in a manner by which teams want to come to us. Um, so we'll see. Jody, Mr. Jody. All right, there you are. How can you not hook into this? Everybody else seems to be able to. I send you a private invitation. All right, I'm going to add you. I'm going to try something here. Jody, I'm trying one more thing for you, okay? I have created the own little circle called the Jody Circle. And Jody is now the only one in the Jody Circle. And I, rather than inviting all of the listeners to come to this, I am going to send it to just the Jody Circle. And Jody Hayward comes up, but I'm sending it to just to Jody. Just to good old my friend Jody. Actually, I don't even see where I can invite new people anymore. So maybe you're screwed. No, it says right here, invite people. I have there to Jody. Jody. Now it's going to your D News email account. I don't know what to do for you, kid, but I love you. You're doing a great job. You're on fire. Jeff Mills. Most media outlets are split on who the Jazz are targeting. Number one, who do you think they are after Parker or Wiggins? I don't know. I do think it would be a gutsy call by the Utah Jazz to draft Andrew Wiggins over Jabari Parker. I think that would be. But I take Wiggins over Jabari. But that's just me. I mean, I'm just a broadcaster. I'm not a scout. I don't have to get paid for these things. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know who they're shooting after. I do know this, that the only possibility is to get it number one. Milwaukee will not move the number 2 pick. Bobby Hardy. Jody, I'm ignoring you now. If the trade with Cleveland does not happen, do you think it's possible that the Jazz could acquire a second lottery pick? It's not a crazy thought, only because I talked to another scout today who said to them, I really like 2 of these things. So you'd have to trade one of your assets. I guess you got to figure out which one of your assets is willing and who you're trying to get, and do you think they're going to be that much better than the guys you already have? Or that you're going to be a lot better next year, and so you trade a pick. But next year's pick could be pretty good still. I'm not sure that we're not going to be still in a situation where we don't get a pretty good pick next year. Jody's funny. Let's go to Jesus Rodriguez. Why does almost every mock have the Jazz taking Vonleh? Because this is how it works. Once one person says something, another person, they all copy it. And that's how it happens. There's not a lot of people out there that have a lot of knowledge on what we're doing, and so they have Vonleh. Vonleh worked out for us. He is good. He's 6'10", 250, and can move his feet. He's got a chance to be fabulous. I talked to scouts today who I ran down the scenario with 2 or 3 guys today on the level of if it goes this way and you're at 5 and Exum went 3 and Gordon, Vonleh, Randall, and Smart are all on the board, and you're Orlando. Who do you take? And they all said they take Vonleh. So, I don't think it's not a crazy pick. It just makes some sense. People think he's going to be really good. I'm nervous about his lack of passing and how that works with our two bigs. Chad Ford told Bill Simmons, Exum's comp is Kobe Bryant. His drive, intelligence, competitiveness, quickness is the closest thing he's seen from any player in any draft. You have to take him if he's available at 5. I think if Exum is there at 5, we're taking him. He's not going to be there at 5. If he's a chance he's going to be there at 5, it may increase our ability to get to 1, though. That would be my other thought for you. Embiid to Philadelphia is becoming very important for the Jazz. We need Embiid to go to Philadelphia. If Embiid goes to Philadelphia, then the Embiid injury becomes a non-issue. Prior to the Embiid to Philadelphia, the draft was not great. We would have rather been at 4 than 5 or 1, 2, or 3, but we were in position. The Embiid injury really kind of put us to 6, put us back down another level with the talent and everything. So if Philadelphia is going to take Embiid, then we're back to negotiating a trade for 1 at the same level we were prior to the injury, or we're back to sitting at 5 for the same talent we would have had for 5. Okay? Let's go Jeff Schulz. Word on the street. It's actually not word on the street. It's actually from Mark Spears and Jeff Goodman. And it was being talked about a little bit at the end of our meeting. Word on the street is that Cleveland's flying Exum in for a last-minute workout, smokescreen, or actual interest at number 1. Possible indication of a trade. Well, Jeff, I appreciate your question, and I will remind you that on Locked On Jazz, we have a storyline page where every time there is a story that comes up, we post to it for you. And you may not know this, so I probably shouldn't be as condescending of an ass right now as I'm being. But let me show you this cute little page that we have. This thing is called Locked On Jazz. And here's the podcast with the latest draftees. And here's the storyline, rumors, murmurs, news, and NBA drafts. And so here is, this report is loaded with all sorts of implications. It's the ESPN source from Andy Katz that the Cavaliers seek last-minute meeting workout. And here's the Cavs have offered to send a private jet to New York. Story that comes up. We post to it Jody? For you. You may not know this. Screwing it up. Now, Jody, do you have any headphones? I need you to find headphones so that the sound does not, and then do you have a microphone? Mic probably in your computer, but just headphones or else the sound reverberates. So go find your little white Apple iPhone headphones you have around, or your kids' headphones, or find something in that nature and you'll be fine. So this is Locked On Jazz right here, and this has all of this information. So why would Cleveland do this? If they're planning on picking 4 or 5, then they may want to take a look at Exum. Orlando and Utah have the most assets to offer Cleveland for the first pick, and Exum looks to be available at 4 or 5, where Orlando and Utah are picking if the assumption that Embiid going 3 is accurate. So there you go. That is why, Jeff, it's a real story. It's very big. It has huge implications on the Utah Jazz. Philadelphia's pick at 3 is the most important pick we're going to watch all day long. Do you think that all the supposed interest by Utah and Jabari Parker is a smokescreen to get Andrew Wiggins with the number 1 pick? No. The only smokescreen, okay, here would be my only thought. I don't know this at all. Here's the only legitimate argument you can make for a smokescreen. The legitimate argument you can make for a smokescreen would be that because of the Mormon factor on Jabari Parker, and I'm going to blow up the reason for the smokescreen at the end of it, is that since it's unlikely we're going to be able to make the pick for 1, if we are going to make the quest for the number 1 pick, we might as well have it out there that we're doing it for Jabari so that our fan base doesn't get upset. And then if we're going to draft Andrew Wiggins, we do it at the last second so that the fan base isn't upset. Now, that's fine and dandy. The only thing that's wrong with that is I have said, and I've believed the whole time, that we are going to pay more for the number 1 pick than any other franchise in the NBA would pay for the exact same pick. The Mormon Church aspect of this dynamic is not helping us as a franchise at all. So I would argue that the smokescreen would be that we want Andrew Wiggins, not Jabari Parker. That would be a better smokescreen on things. Because the fact of the matter is, we are hurt by the fact that Jabari's Mormon. we're going to have to pay more. Jody now joins us. How are you, Jody?
Hey, hi, how's it going, David?
Good, you got it to work. Talk again. I need to see if it's actually recording.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Wow, you're so cool. This is working all the time. And I
It's hard to get technology to work in Harriman.
Yeah, well, hey, if you don't burn down, you're good in Harriman. All right,
Exactly.
you're on fire. Update with people with kind of what you know about what's going on and what you've been reporting today.
Yeah, it's been an active day, but the big question I always get is who are the Jazz going to pick at number 5? And from what I'm told, they still don't know. And it's a lot of discussions going on in the front office right now. There's talks that my source told me that Derek Favors was offered up to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that that might come back around by tomorrow night. But the Cavaliers are going to want more. They're going to want an Alec Burks, some picks. They need some sweeteners to give up that number 1 pick. So that's kind of the biggest news out there. But I also found it interesting that there's a lot of there's not exactly a 100% feel on who they want at that number 5 if they don't move up. But I think that Aaron Gordon, from what I'm hearing, is the guy, that he's the strongest candidate there at number 5, assuming that Exum isn't available. I think if Dante Exum is available at number 5, they snag him, from what I'm told. And another thing that I've heard from multiple sources now is that there are some concerns about Julius Randle. I know there's some medical issues, but I don't think it's just the medical issues with Julius Randle. So I don't think the Jazz will be picking him. Who knows? Sometimes you have to always throw out that caveat that things could change. So, but that's what I'm hearing now. Another thing is there's still a very good possibility that the Jazz could trade down to get an offensive impact guy, somebody who can shoot, score, and help the Jazz on that end of the court. And I think that goes into I don't think they're in love with a lot of these power forwards that are available at number 5. I think they like them, but all of them have such flaws that they might consider moving down to get somebody who can offer them a little bit more on the offensive end.
So I think you're a reporter. I'm an employee. I'm very open about that. I think a lot of what you have is telling to one level, and this is why I think people have to get. Almost every decision in sports is not 100%, 0%.
Right.
I think that's something we all forget. Sure, by the time they're done, they have to be, because the decision is done. But most decisions, whether even it's how you're going to guard the pick and roll or anything else, are debated, discussed. And Dennis Lindsay, if you go back, a very telling interview that was done, R.C. Buford sat down with Zach Lowe on the Lowe podcast a few months ago. I would strongly suggest anyone to go listen to it, because it talks about how Pop and RC do their meetings. And basically their rule is, if you're in the meeting, you better have a voice. And we've hired you. We believe in you. You better stand up for yourself. You do us no good if you sit quiet. Now, if you don't really believe what you're saying, that's not going to do us. So the fact that you're talking about that, hey, there's huge discussion, nothing definitive has been said, that matches exactly what the R.C. Buford, Greg Popovich Spursian way of doing things, which is where Dennis has come in. From what I've heard from the people I talk to, is that, yeah, that is kind of how they do things now. And Dennis has talked to me about this, that's a much better way. So Dennis may be trying to lead the room in a direction where he believes XYZ PDQ is the right choice, but he's not. There's no benefit for him to announce that to the group now, right? Maybe they finalize their board at whatever time they decide tomorrow, 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever. That's the moment where discussion stops. But up to that moment, in Dennis's mind, in the Spursian way, discussion is good. I think that's very true. Let's see. The second thing is, I'm running off the offensive player would have to be Nick Stauskas. I don't know how to pronounce. I guess I've been pronouncing it Stoyaskis and Stauskas, or Doug McDermott.
I wasn't given an exact name, but I do. I mean, those are two options, obviously, that are supposed to go a little bit lower in the lottery, and I think that both have some intrigue to them. McDermott's.
Sorry, you have to be quite an asset to make that worth it.
Right. And I think the bigger key is that, I mean, right now it's really indecisive, and I think falling down from 4 to 5 really put the Jazz in a quandary here, because if they're in that number four, and then added on top of that is the whole Joel Embiid issue. You just don't know if he's going to be there. I'm not sure the Jazz have seen. I know you guys have talked about Art Tellem. I don't think he's released that medical report to the Jazz yet, and I could be wrong, but it's my sense that they haven't seen all the details on that yet, and it's just it'll be hard for them to pass him up if he's there at 5, but I don't have a good feel as for what the Jazz would do at this point.
I think the other one, what you're really saying in the bigger picture model of this is that if the Jazz can get to 1, they move a little bit out of asset allocation mode. That's what Dennis keeps calling it, right?
Yeah, right.
They move out of asset allocation mode and into beginning to have the pillars that you're building the franchise with. If you're at 5, you're, as much as I like an Aaron Gordon or someone like that, he's probably not a 1 or a 2 guy. You continue to grow this plethora of threes, franchise threes that we kind of have. We might have 5 of them at that point. And so if you're going to do that, then maybe you're better off moving to 10 and getting some other piece that's another asset for future, because at some point asset allocation's got to go get you those foundation pieces. Your first opportunity possibly to do it here is if you can put enough together to get number 1, but that pound of flesh is going to be significant. I would point out one other thing. And this is a little esoteric and maybe irrelevant to some extent. And so you're welcome to, Jody, kind of say, yeah, whatever. I've talked to enough GMs about how deals are done that the way it works is the phone call goes, first of all, there's 10 to 15 phone calls that have happened during the year between every team.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's a phone call where the Jazz have clearly gone to Cleveland at some point. Probably were waiting for Cleveland to call them. They didn't do it. And said, hey, we're interested. Could you send us either, it depends how kind of bizarre they're going to get. Teams hate to use player names because of exactly what's going on right now, that Derek Favors' name ends up out in the paper. So they'll say, hey, could you just send us your list of what your desires are? Then that team can send back players or send out types of players or things of that nature. To some extent on this deal, it's pretty simple, right? You can't trade Gordon, so Favors is the guy who is your next best player. I don't know. This is probably what's that whole phrase about dividing hairs or whatever.
Splitting hairs.
Splitting hairs. Yeah, I think to some extent, sure, maybe Favors' name is out there, but I actually think that there's much more of just a discussion of like, hey, here's our assets. What do you know what our assets are? They, like, I can look, you and I can look, right? There's no mystery here. These are their assets. What are you looking for? And then you start to piece the thing together. And I would guess that not until yesterday, last night, or maybe even tonight, do we ever get so specific that you're piecing pieces of the deal together. Just from the knowledge I have of how the league works. Just for perspective.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the Cavaliers, it was pretty common knowledge that Joel Embiid was their target. They need a big man. They need a rim protector. And so it just is common sense that the guy on the Jazz that would be intriguing to them would be Derek Favors, who that's what he does. And so I don't think they'll do the deal if it's just Derek Favors and number 5. And why should they when Orlando is apparently offering 4 and 12 and Aaron Aflalo? And right now that's what they're doing. They're also, okay, what do you want to give us? Hey, Orlando, this is what the Jazz are giving us. Hey, Philadelphia, here's what Orlando and the Jazz are giving us. Hey, Minnesota, you sure about Kevin Love? And it's just part of the game. And I don't think anything becomes really serious until tomorrow night. And that's when they've got to make a move. Somebody has to make a move.
And I think the other aspect going on here is that where Embiid goes. You know, I really think that plays largely into this. And I think the fact that Cleveland's reportedly trying to fly Exum out to Cleveland for a workout tells me that people are really beginning to believe Embiid is going 3. That if the old theory was Embiid would slide to 4 or 5, then Cleveland does the deal. But right now they're thinking about going 3. You want to take some questions from some of the viewers?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. You're going to answer the first question because I'm getting up for a second. Does Derek Favors know he's on the block, and how is his psyche be if he doesn't actually get traded? Jody, go ahead.
Well, I talked to his agent last week, and they hadn't heard when the first rumors came out when Spence Checketts reported that Derek Favors was on the trading block with Cleveland. But I'm sure he's heard now. I haven't talked personally to Derek Favors, but yeah, I mean he's on Twitter. He follows this stuff. He knows these players aren't as obtuse and hiding in a cave like some people like to think they are. They're not just on a beach, not paying attention. But I think it probably isn't very fun for Derek Favors to hear this. He dealt with that almost from the moment he was drafted by the Nets. There was talk that he was going to be traded, and eventually he was traded. But he had to deal with that his entire rookie year. Really kind of played some mind games with him, and I think it probably pisses him off a little bit, to be honest with you, because he found a home in Utah. He bought a home in Utah. He has made Salt Lake City, up in the mountains, in a different culture, different type of people from Atlanta. He's made a home, and he loves it here. And so I'm sure he's not excited about hearing his name in possible trade rumors. So I guess I'm speaking for him now. I just know that I probably would be. On the other hand, these guys know it's a business, and they're assets. And I mean, they're trade commodities, and they're people.
Here's the other aspect to it. Dennis, he doesn't get traded, right? Dennis Lindsay picks up the phone, calls him, and says, Derek, I know you heard your name around. We decided it wasn't worth it to do the deal. We like having you here. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right? The fact is on all of these things, when the deal doesn't get done, you can always talk your way back to the player because you didn't trade him.
They wanted you. All these teams want you, so that's a great thing. So, and we kept you. We're paying you. We kept you.
All right, let's go to Daniel Tate. Rudy Gobert posted a photo of him and Raul Neto hiking in Salt Lake today. So this means Neto is playing in the summer league. To me, Neto means Jazz might be looking for a point guard with a 23rd pick. You agree? I got to tell you, Daniel, I think everyone's mind went exactly where you did. Like, why is he still here? He's clearly working out. He's trying to stay in shape. The Jazz have said from the very day they drafted him, he was a part of the long-term plan of the organization. They hope to have him around. I have no idea, but I think the point is that the drafting him at the end of last year, if you believe he's good enough to play in the NBA, is now suddenly a fabulous luxury to have around, depending on how this draft plays out.
Another thing I saw or gathered from that photo is, I mean, everybody talks about how Rudy Gobert is a stick and he's so thin, but he's pretty cut. I mean, he had his shirt off. He was, I mean, I'm not like drooling or anything over here. Don't get me wrong, but he was pretty buff. He's been working out.
Jody, you will not get this joke, but 5 of our listeners were. Turn it off. I went and saw Book of Mormon last night.
Awesome.
Full of Book of Mormon references. I don't know, Jody. I'm not sure I'd do it if I were you. There's a line. There's a fine line between being able to laugh at yourself and someone laughing too hard at you. Right? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get that all the time.
Book of Mormon. I would just say I'm very surprised he's playing in Salt Lake City this year. I'll just say that.
Well, right. There are a lot of people who appreciate laughing at Mormons in Salt Lake City.
I'll make, as the non-member of this conversation, I would say that I think it is inappropriately still the one thing in the world that somehow is all right to make fun of and be offensive to without anyone getting upset about. So there we go. Now back to basketball. What do you think of all the players' interviews today? I heard Dante Exum and Marcus Smart, when asked about the Jazz, were a little snooty and unwilling to play here. Thoughts? I don't think that's fair. I did these interviews. Dante Exum was particularly polite about not working out there, and he simply just said, They drafted Trey Burke. My agent decided it was not the best situation for us, so we didn't work out there. Frankly, Dante Exum probably didn't need to work out with the Jazz at 5. He's probably going to go earlier, or maybe now it's going to turn out he goes to 5 and the Jazz draft him anyway. So, there's a little bit of a game also that's going on in which you don't want your player to – you don't want to have your player never wants to work out below the spot that they're probably going to get drafted. The Marcus Smart thing's pretty clear. They did both these teams. Jazz met with both these guys in Chicago, but both those things are pretty clear. That hey, Trey Burke's on this roster, and these guys want playing time.
I think with Marcus Smart, I mean, I asked Walt Perrin during the training, with the pre-draft workouts. I think the big question for Marcus Smart and Trey Burke is, last year would Marcus Smart have been picked before Trey Burke? And Walt kind of agreed that he would have, although he didn't fully go through the whole process, so that might have changed. And if the Jazz believe that Marcus Smart will be a better point guard than Trey Burke in the long run, I think they would take him, but I don't think they're necessarily convinced of that. So I think the jury still is out on that.
All right, let's go to the next question, the most important question of all. Can you see the questions, by the way, Jody, or am I the only one who can see them?
I can't see the questions. I just noticed on Twitter that people are taking pictures and making fun of my bookshelf.
Well, Jody, what is the floating leg in the background?
It's from the Christmas Story. It's the leg lamp. I got a nice award from the.
See it? Talk so you become the picture.
Oh, there we go. So I got an award from the Professional Basketball Writers Association this past season for a story about Enes Kanter, the letter that he wrote to Al Jefferson. A really fun story. And a friend, she sent me my major award. So it's for Gile. It's kind of fun. Now I forgot what the question was.
That was the question.
Oh, okay.
I justified in booing if the Jazz end up taking Vonleh with Gordon and Smart sitting there for the taking. Is there something I'm not seeing with this guy? From Harry. You're actually welcome to do whatever you want. Here's what I find hysterical right now is, I don't know if you're getting this, Jody, but the amount of messages I get where I want so-and-so or so-and-so, or I would maybe do this. There are no maybes and there are no ors when it comes to draft day. If you got to proclaim that you want one or the other and stick on it, because that's the essence of that's why this is so difficult.
Yeah, and that's why I found it interesting when Dennis Lindsey, when the Jazz lost the lottery, basically dropped down a spot. It took him a while. It was like a punch in the gut, but then he had to own it and say, "Hey, we're at number 5, so we've got to like where we're at." And I think that's the same thing. They will rally the troops around whoever they pick with number 5, and which I believe is going to be Aaron Gordon, because I think Noah Vonleh will go ahead. Won't be on the board at that point, and so I think that they'll all just say, "Hey, Aaron Gordon's our guy," even if they don't fully believe it. He now is our guy.
But wait a sec. If you don't believe Noah Vonleh is going to be on the board, when do you think that Joel Embiid is going?
I think that there's a possibility, and that's actually a really good question, because I'm almost sold that he might go higher, and that would put Noah Vonleh likely at number 5 for the Jazz. In which case, I don't know. From what I'm hearing, I still think they like Aaron Gordon, but everybody else, like you said earlier, is on the Noah Vonleh bandwagon, and I kind of am as well, just because of that stretch 4 possibility he gives. Although I did notice that your shot chart's showing that he hasn't shot that much from outside. So, yeah, I think that if Joel Embiid is on the board with Aaron Gordon, that unless the Jazz are convinced that that's not a long-term issue with his multiple medical problems right now, I think that Aaron Gordon would go ahead of Joel Embiid. Still not 100% on that though.
I think you're right. I think you're dead right on that. All right, let's continue on the questions. Sorry, I'm arranging a few other things all at the same time. Let's see. I'm going to go to the bottom of the questions because I think they come in the reverse order, and I want to get to the people who submitted them early, and I think I'm not getting to those. Holy smokes, there's a lot of questions. We only have like 20 minutes left before I have to do another interview. So let's start flying through them. Trent Truler, any of these, are there players on the Jazz roster that are effectively sell high at this point in their careers and development? No, I don't think so. Is there anybody overvalued to where they would be as a player right now?
No, because if Favors was overvalued, I think the Cavaliers would have jumped all over that, just the number 5 in favor. So I think the Jazz have a lot of nice pieces. They don't have anybody who's overvalued at this point.
All right, let's go to the next one. Regardless of draft position, who is the best fit for the Jazz from this draft? From Taylor Berthelsen. I would just simply go with best talent, so I say Andrew Wiggins because I think he's the best player in this draft.
And I like Jabari Parker. I think he's the best scorer, and I think that would help the Jazz most for the future.
And I now can't tell what order questions are coming in, whether they're on the top or the bottom. So we'll just keep flying through them. With Cleveland trying to get Exum into the last-minute workout, does it sound like they are set on trading the first pick to Orlando or Utah, knowing that Exum will be available there? I think they're going to look at Exum to make sure. It does sound to me from everybody I've talked to, Cleveland is very willing to move the pick. And the question is whether or not who can make the deal to get him there. And Cleveland's doing their appropriate due diligence to realize that if Embiid is going to go 3, if they're at 4, they're deciding between Exum and Vonleh, and if they're at 5, they're deciding between the one who flipped through. So they're doing their research appropriately. Yes, I do think if flying in Exum is a sign that Cleveland's willing to make a deal.
Well, yeah, and especially if they go for Exum, he's not going to be picked number 1, I don't think. I think they would trade down to number 3 or number 4 to get him.
Jason Lamb, I assume you're staying in Brooklyn. That's not true. I'm staying in New York. What's your favorite coffee spot there in New York? You should do coffee reviews after road games. Yeah, except for the fact that most of my audience is Mormon and doesn't drink coffee, and I've had people complain to me about the fact that I, on times, will actually drink coffee while doing a podcast. And I'm the only broadcaster in the league who ever gets that complaint. I promise you that. There's a place called Risotto that is my favorite here in New York. All right. And Jody is not going to give you coffee reviews.
I'll do smoothie reviews. Me and the Greek Freak.
Scott Paris, haven't been impressed with Parker's interviews and comments. Huge red flag. I don't see what I have problems with. Yikes! Announcing he thinks he'll go to the Bucks. He is trying to tank interviews too. I'm gonna actually agree with this person.
No.
Jabari was the only person today who I thought was flustered by the moment. Now maybe the moment's bigger for him and he's more trained and there's stuff going on, but he was the only one whose hands seemed he was the only one who visually was uncomfortable. The key on this whole thing for Jabari, you better really believe he's going to score 20, 25 points a game in this league and that his body's going to stay in shape.
I wasn't there for the interview, so I can't speak on that. But
you just went dead.
Did I really? Test. Hello.
Genius. Okay, go ahead.
We tried to kill the Trib. We killed me instead. I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Am I here now? Am I live?
Yes, you are. Go ahead. You're live.
Okay. I think that he doesn't have that much experience in these big situations. So I cut these guys some slack on how they handle the media. I mean, obviously Milwaukee came out and said, "Hey, we want you at number 2. We want you." And Cleveland's not quite as committed. They're not as committed right now, obviously, because they are talking about Wiggins, and supposedly their front office is up, and their owner wants one thing, and the other members of the front office want another thing, and now they're bringing in Exum. So Milwaukee's made it clear that I think he was just answering the question forthright that, hey, they said that they would take me at number 2. I would go to Cleveland and play there as well, but they haven't given me that guarantee yet. But I really want to go
Jody,
play.
I'm going to let you go. We're beginning to have minor we're going to have minor technical problems. Thanks so much. Keep up the great work. I will talk to you soon. And,
thanks, guys.
Stay in touch and enjoy the lake. That is our good man Jody right there. We appreciate it very much. We will now eject Jody. Are you sure you want to eject Jody from this call? You also want to block the user? No, but he's gone. All right, let's fly through the questions. With LeBron opting out going to affect the Cavs are going to do with the number 1 pick? I think LeBron opting out impacts everything in some way, shape, or form. Yes, sure. The problem, one thing that Jazz have in this deal with trying to do with some of the Cleveland, is every time you add a sweetener, it brings another contract into the mix. And if Cleveland's really trying to save space, then that makes it difficult. Pretending the Cavs will take either Faves number 5 and one of Burks 23 in future Golden State, would you A, take Wiggins, B, take Parker, or 3, stay at 5 and take Gordon? I don't like answering this question because I don't like talking about trading our players. I'm too close with them to and root for them too much to do that. But let me just say, if the decision has been made to make the trade, I would take Wiggins, but that's just because I like Wiggins better. I'm just being honest. But I understand why you take Jabari. You take Jabari because you believe he can score 20, 25 points a game, and that's what our team needs. So, but I'm not in a position to make that deal. Don't know enough, and frankly, don't have the guts to talk about our players like that. Given how young these guys are, how does the possibility of growing an inch or two factor? Is that something that a team can even project? Noah Vonleh doesn't really do a lot for me, but add 2 inches to him, and everything is different. And Aaron Gordon's 18, add 2 inches to him, and everything's different. I think you actually can do some of this on some of these tests and be able to figure these things out, and that does play into things. And I think it's legitimate. I mean, these guys. The only thing is on Vonleh, he's 6'10", 250. If he becomes 6'10", 270, then he's almost too big, right? On Gordon, he's 6'9", 6'8", 225. If he becomes 245, then he's perfect. That's my thought on that. During the course of the draft, are new deals with new teams spontaneously proposed, or have they all been on the table for some time? How many calls are likely to come to a team while they're on the clock? I think none, because the clock's very short in the NBA. I think there's been discussions about everything up to that point, but the Minnesota-Utah thing materialized very late in the draft. When the Jazz found out Boston was, I think, drafting Kelly Olynyk, they've never specifically said, but I think that was the deal. Then all of a sudden they had to make this last-second move to go and scramble because the guys they wanted. I think the Jazz actually were going to take Olynyk at 12 and Gobert at 24, if that's the right numbers on that draft. And suddenly they weren't going to be able to get Olynyk at 12, and they didn't really have anyone they liked and they didn't want to take and this and that. And so then they went and made the move along the way, and they got it. And so I think that's how it plays out some of the time as well. Is frankly, you try to make a move to go get one of these guys, and that's what happens. Oh, I know what happens. I know how they sort the questions. I think maybe is you guys plus the questions on the right side, and then it brings them up to me. I get it. That's really cool. All right. NBA Draft Net is reporting Utah Jazz have made a promise to Jordan Adams at 23. Bullcrap. Total horse shit. I can't. There's no he's declared for the draft. There's no reason you promise him at 23. We might draft him at 23, but there's no reason you would promise him at 23. We don't even know if we're holding on to 23. It just doesn't make any sense. But he might think he's going to 23, and they might have been very, hey, if you're there, we'd really consider taking you kind of thing. Any chance the Jazz could move Trey Burke in a non-guaranteed fillers for number 7 and Nash, or the Kings for some bad contracts, then take Smart and one of our power forwards, or take 5? Yes, Zachary Davis. I think there's a play here. If LA is really moving 7 and 8, or Sacramento's moving 8, and they have interest in one of our guys, could be Alec, could be Trey, could be whatever. I think there's that scenario comes into play. The other one that gets interesting here, by the way, I would point out is if you did Marcus Smart at 5 and then Aaron Gordon at 8, or however it plays, whatever you get, Raul Neto becomes very important at that point. Because now you have Marcus Smart as a big guard with a small guard in Neto. You could do the same thing with Dante Exum, right? If you get Exum at 5 and he's going to be your point, you're going to develop him. There you go. Trevor Cooley, you've talked a lot about Aaron Gordon free throw shooting. What would his draft position be if he were a 70% free throw shooter at the line? Great question. 3. Maybe 2. He's got everything else. By the way, I think I might have murmured a word back there. I apologize if it bothered you. Why doesn't Jody have a webcam? I don't know, but he had a leg. Ginger, I've got till the phone rings, really, is how this goes now. What do you attribute Favors' lack of motor running the floor last year? Always has been that way, or loses beat him down. Is motor running hard teachable? This is why I'd be okay with seeing him packaged in the number 1. He's got to run harder. I don't know the answer. It has always been the question on him of whether he has that motor and has that energy and plays that hard. So that's just a question. It's probably the easy answer is to say it's coaching, but I think it's on Derek just to mature and grow and understand the responsibility and be a leader in that sense. And hopefully he's going to pick that up with maturity and time and understand the value of doing that. You could probably go back and look at Derek's Georgia Tech stuff, and I bet it'd be the same. If you went back and look at Derek Williams' Arizona stuff, that's how it was. That's what's unique to this draft is the fact that every single one of these guys plays very, very hard. Where the Jazz able to lock in on a guy this year like they did last year with Trey? Reports were Trey was Lindsey's guy in April of 2013. Did what he had to do to get him. Who's this guy this year? Well, it might be Jabari or Andrew Wiggins. Might be a little different because of our draft position, and it might be Aaron Gordon at 5 for all we know. But I think we'll find out a little bit along the way. I'm not sure I did that correctly. I think I screwed something up there. Rudy Gobert's arms look noticeably bigger in his Instagram photo with Neto. Rudy pumping serious iron. Rudy's a worker, man. Rudy's in the plans, guys. Rudy is an important piece of the future of the Utah Jazz. All of these decisions are being made. I think there's a belief that Rudy can really play. I think there's a real belief that Rudy Gobert is an important piece of this franchise. I think everybody wishes that Rudy Gobert had gotten more time on the floor at the end of last year when we were clearly out of it. I love Jeremy Evans, but Jeremy Evans getting minutes over Rudy Gobert at the end of last year was hard for me to swallow. He's an important asset to this organization. I think he's a piece. He's working very hard. He's a worker. He wants to get better. I think he's part of this equation and an important piece of how this day plays out tomorrow. You keep mentioning how the Jazz need pillar players to build around. Were Stockton and Malone considered pillars when they were drafted, or did they develop into those roles? No, they certainly weren't. However, with that said, let me just give you kind of an idea of why all-pro players from 97 to 2009. I haven't updated. I meant to do it today. I haven't had time. All-pro players of the 65 players taken in that, so this is a 13-year span. There have been 14 guys I determined as all-pro, better than all-star. 14 guys. 9 of the 14 were drafted picks 1 through 5. 5 of them were picks 6 through 10. Not a single one drafted after 11. Now, Manu Ginobili probably could get into that. Okay? All-star picks, so picks 1 through 5, 14% of picks 1 through 5 become all-pro. 34% of all picks 1 through 5 become all-star or better. 34% 1 through 5. We should get an all-star tomorrow. 1 out of 3 chance to get an all-star. 6 through 10, you've got a 16% chance of an all-star. 11 through 15, there hasn't been one. 16 through 20 is a 3% chance, and 21 through end of the draft is a 2% chance. Let me remind you that from pick 11 on, the percentage of players that don't end up in the league is 54%. From pick 11 on, 54% of the players on an average draft end up not playing a rotation spot in the league. Only 20% of the picks from, actually 18% of the picks from 16 down end up to be starters. 1 out of 5 from 16 down. You are going to figure that out. Hi, this is Locke. Good, I need to end my podcast, so let me just do that. All right, how close are we? All right, then I'll close it up right away. I'll be right there. All right, that's the end of our podcast. I got to go do an interview. Talk to you soon. Thank you very much. We'll do one of these tomorrow as well. Sorry for those people I didn't get to your questions.